Okay, this will just be a quick little video on solving basic absolute value equations. I think the easiest way to think of it, you must isolate the absolute value expression within the equation in order to solve it. And you would use the same logic that you've learned, the same skill set that you've acquired if you were isolating a variable in the equation to solve for the variable value. And then enact the equation equal to two different values. And that process is actually called bifurcation. It does have a name. And we'll talk about this later whenever we study this unit in more detail. I would like for you to present your final answer using set notation with the braces. And then the two basic facts to remember about absolute value. It's always positive, and you're just simply measuring distance from 0 on a number line. So if I have a basic number line, I would have two numbers equidistant from 0. So here I've chosen the variable n, so I would have both positive and negative n. And I would like to point out the notation with the addition sign and the subtraction sign on top of each other. When you're referring to both the positive, and I'll use 10 for an example, when you're referring to both the positive and negative value of the same number, this is a notation standard used in math. Just the addition and subtraction are written on top of each other. Okay, let's do a few of the problems on the video. We'll start with something basic, like number 46. In order to isolate the absolute value, you would just simply add 2 to both sides, and then you would have the absolute value of y equaling 10, and you would have two values that would make that true, both negative 10 and positive 10. So I could present my set like that. I could also present my set using the notation. And then on the number line, it's just implied that you have both positive 10 and negative 10 that are 10 units from 0 on either side of 0. Okay, let's look at number 55. Let's look at number 55. Okay, I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to change that negative outside the parentheses to a -1 to illustrate my point. I think the first thing I would like to do is divide the red -1 away from both sides. And when I do that, actually I really don't need the parentheses anymore. When I do that, this is what I'm left with on the left-hand side. And now the 6 becomes positive 6. Now my next step would be to subtract 2 from both sides. And I'm going to have the absolute value of x equaling positive 4, which would imply that I have two values, both positive and negative 4 in my solution set. And then to do the number line illustration, just means that I've got two numbers that are 4 units on either side of 0. Let's look at a problem like number 58. Number 58. So here I'm trying to isolate the absolute value of s. So the first thing that I'm going to do is subtract 9 from both sides. And then I'm going to end up with this. I'm going to apply the same logic that I did in the last problem. I'm going to think of this as a -1. I could distribute it through, but I'm going to go ahead and follow through with this logic. If I divide both sides by the red -1, then I'm left with this. Whoops. And now to isolate the absolute value, I would subtract 7 from both sides, and I now have this. And my conclusion here is going to be no solution, because one of the basic rules for absolute value is that it must be positive. And I think that you all can take it from here on your own.